Senate Appropriations, March 1st, 2022. Senator Guru,
Here.
Senator Hicks,
Excused.
Senator Kinski,
Here.
Senator Steinmetz here, Senator Perkins,
Excused.
you have a quorum.
Thank you. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 6, I believe. First up, and is there somebody here to present on the bill? Oh, Representative Simpson, welcome. Good to see you, as always.
Mr. Chairman, it's a pleasure to be here. Evan Simpson, Representative, House District 21. Mr. Chairman, what would you like? Would you like me to go through page by page to give you a general summary, or what's your preference?
Evan, let's start with a general summary. And in particular, you recall in the ARPA bill, we authorized quite a few water and sewer and local infrastructure projects. And so you might highlight the merits of this as opposed to the other.
Very good, Mr. Chairman. I'll jump right in then. As you understand, one of the direct opportunities for ARPA was wastewater and water projects. And so this bill coming out of the Select Water Committee identifies a brand new program that would be administered through the Water Development Commission with the Office of State Lands and DEQ working as a team to administer the program. So the program says we're going to set $95 million of direct ARPA aside into a special account. And then we're going to invite municipalities and water districts to submit applications. No sewer districts. No irrigation districts. This is a clean water application process. So irrigation districts do not qualify. So the municipalities and water and sewer districts will submit applications. We anticipate a one-time event, and it'll happen this fall. And the agencies will gather all of them using existing established criteria that they've used for years, and they'll rank the projects. And then they submit that to the Water Development Commission for review. The House Appropriations threw in some language, took it a little bit. The appropriators like to always get reports, and so now the Appropriations Committee gets a report as to the findings of the committee as well. And then once it's all good to go, then those projects will be awarded. There's a couple criteria. One is that a project cannot be larger. The award of a grant cannot be larger than $7.5 million. We set that up because we did not want 2 or 3 massive projects just to hammer the entire budget and take all the money. So it's intended for the $2 and the $3 million types of projects is what we're expecting. The other criteria is the percent grant. We strategically chose 85% grant, 15% cost share. We wanted to have those local entities have money and participate one way or another, even if they had to borrow the money. We wanted them to participate. We also wanted this money, since it's ARPA money, to go out and make as much good as we could find in the communities as much as possible. So the 85% grant is a fairly rich grant amount that would entice those to come in. So we have in the House, since this bill has passed through the House, we have learned of literally hundreds of projects that are begging and pleading to come onto this program and waiting. It was very well received in the House as a strong program. Now, Mr. Chairman, reference to the 50 million. So a member of Appropriations was concerned that this bill might die along the way. And so 50 million was appropriated.
Evan, could you pull your mic just a little bit closer? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I talked too softly. Sorry. So $50 million in the ARPA bill was set aside for this very purpose. It was unique in that it was given to the SLIP board to administer. So we have 2 different kinds of programs here. But that was intended, and in fact, there is a footnote that says if House Bill 6 makes it all the way through and is enacted into law, the 50 million just simply goes away because we didn't think it was fair that we duplicate the funds. So the 50 is only there as a catch in case this bill fails. Gentlemen, I forgot to introduce my esteemed colleagues here. They keep bouncing around with their titles and their positions, so I'm not quite sure how to introduce them. But gentlemen, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Chairman, Jason Mead, Interim Director of the Water Development Office.
Mr. Chairman, Brandon Gebhardt, State Engineer.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything to add, but I would stand for any questions you guys might have.
Likewise, I have nothing to add.
Committee? Please.
Mr. Chairman, I was just wondering what your thoughts would be on the difference between water development and the commission administering that, or SLIB. Also maybe having some input on that and timelines as far as how do we most expediently get the money out to our locals, which is, I believe this is what we're intending to do with both the ARPA direct bill and this bill, which is most expedient. And then I know there are a little bit of concern with the fact it's going through agencies rather than elected officials. So could you address those two questions, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to. And we have the directors of the associated agencies with us here today so they can answer for themselves. There was a lot of discussion in the Select Water Committee of how we manage this program. We worked in a joint effort with the governor's task force. So these three agencies were involved from the very beginning. And there was a lot of discussion about should we let the Office of State Lands take the lead or Water Development Commission take the lead. And as a Select Water Committee, we ultimately landed on Water Development Commission because of their strength in having staff engineers and inspectors that could go out and monitor the activities out in the field. It's a variable, but we feel like we've got the right team. Let's talk about that elected position instead of the commission. That's a really good point. There are strong feelings about that. Frankly, I'm of the opinion during an election year, this could have been not a good result had we left it up to politicians to make the decisions, because everybody's going to want to fold things and slide things toward their group that they need an electorate. I think based on these agencies we have, they do this all the time. They are experts at this, managing and evaluating criteria for projects. I really like the fact that we're leaving it to non-elected officials. It'll be on a technical, unbiased basis, and that's what I prefer.
Anything else? Senator Grew? You said that these grant apps would be made based on the usual criteria. What are those criteria?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a good question. So these agencies review proposals all the time, especially the Office of State Lands. They review all of the SLIB project proposals that come in, and working with the State Revolving Loan Fund, the two funds, they are used to establishing what criteria they want to work with. And Water Development Commission, on the same token, they have their own criteria. And so what the bill spells out, there's actually a couple pages there that talks about them getting together and establishing their own unique criteria just for this program. And so we have utmost confidence they will come up with the right angles and the right criteria they want to look for ranking the projects.
So one of you two gentlemen can tell me what the criteria is. I know there's usually, and depending on the program, sometimes you want to look at the rates. You want to know that their rates are in the upper quartile, or that they're, it's not a community just is afraid to raise their rates and they're just looking for free money. I don't know if the degree of impairment of the water is a factor. What are the factors you anticipate you'd be looking at in ranking these grants?
Mr. Chairman, when we were discussing this, it was our understanding, and I think it still largely holds true, that the project eligibility criteria would essentially follow the SRF criteria. So that would be the criteria that we would use to determine project eligibility.
Okay, and those are?
I don't know off the top of my head, but there are quite a few criteria of that program that are vetted on each project that we use through the SRF, our partnership on the SRF side of things. And so we would just carry that same criteria, assuming that that stays the same in the infrastructure bill, and I believe it does. But that, all of those criteria would apply to this project eligibility determination as well.
Might you send me a copy of those criteria? And if it's 30 pages, just send me the bullet points. I don't want a treatise. It'd be helpful.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman.
And so then, and just one more question that I should know the answer to this. Who usually vets these water and sewer projects? Because my 10 years as mayor, I thought we always send it into the SLIB and it started there.
Mr. Chairman, it's SRF program, the applications go to the state land. And then the three agencies, depending on whether it's drinking water or clean water, the three agencies work together, and water development typically does a technical side, the review for the technical side. And then state lands is kind of the banker and among other things, but water development does provide a technical review of the applications for project eligibility.
So what's the engineer bring to the table? If water development's still in the technical review?
The engineer will bring the design and the project itself.
No, I mean you as the state engineer.
Oh,
What's your
Mr. Chairman,
contribution to the
I,
process?
I'm testifying on behalf of my former position with water development because I apologize because
Okay.
I was involved in these conversations.
Okay, you're not
I'm
involved
stepping
in the-
back in.
You're
time.
not involved in the bill.
State engineer's office is not
You're
involved.
just here to help Jason.
That's correct.
Okay, I got you. That helps. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would also add that DEQ has a role in this as well. I don't know if Brandon mentioned that. And they look at the priorities of projects, which gets back to your criteria question, whether or not they're health hazards or compliance issues with water quality standards and things of that nature, on how to prioritize which projects should be funded first.
And under the SRF program, what's the match? It's part grant, part loan, isn't it? SRF? Or it's a
Mr.
revolving
Chairman,
loan
I
fund?
think there is again, we're not the experts on the funding piece of it, but it depends on median household income and population and various things to determine how much principal forgiveness, or in other words, grant money is provided to a particular entity. And
It's a sliding fee scale.
I think so.
It'd be nice to know that when you send that criteria over, if it, in fact, it is a sliding fee scale. So I guess that exhausts my questions. You have anything else, committee members?
Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Steinmetz?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think state lands could probably tell us a little more about the SRF program since they administer it, and they might be able to answer some of your criteria questions. So I don't know if you want to hear from them now, or if you want them just to send that over. I know we have until 3 o'clock before we go back in, so it's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd just like to get it sent over. What I'm puzzling is frankly, I'm just not clear why we're doing this when we already have established processes. It sounds like just so that we can cut the 5. Those are the only differences I'm seeing.
Mr. Chairman, there was a big issue about the Water Development Commission's capacity to manage the projects in the construction phase. They have full staff that are floating all over the state of Wyoming on a continuous basis already, and where LSOI doesn't.
But is that not true in the existing process as well? Doesn't water development, aren't there staff across the state involved in any SRF projects?
Mr. Chairman, they manage the Water Development Commission projects, but correct me if I'm wrong, they do not manage any OLSI projects, wastewater or water. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, to a much lesser extent, I believe. We approve or involved in the approval of pay application, but as far as boots on the ground with the SRF program, we don't do as much of that as we do with our water development projects.
Okay, thank you. Anything else before we open it up to public comment? All right, well, thank you. Thank you, all three of you gentlemen. Do we have anybody from the public here to comment on HB 6? Senator Guru?
Thank you. I know that Wham wants to give some testimony, but also I was hoping that if either of our agencies wanted to speak to this, I would hope they would feel. Because we might.
Well, certainly, I didn't mean to exclude. I
didn't think you.
Okay. All right. Did any of the other agencies wish to address the committee? Okay. All right, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apparently, they're much smarter than I am. Appreciate the committee's time. For the record, David Fraser, Executive Director, Wyoming Association of Municipalities. I see that we have online with us Mayor George Sieglin of Lingle as well. Just for a little quick perspective on the amount of money, you know, what we're seeing, and of course, the legislature is being being generous with us this session. What we're finding is something that I believe you're finding similar in the state is that even with the influx of money, the needs still outweigh the money that's coming in. And just to illustrate that, let me share with you that we sent out a quick survey to, a quick call for information to our members and asked them to tell us their top 3 water projects and put a price tag, and a price tag on those. And we heard back from, again, it was something done pretty quickly. We heard back from 43 of the 99 cities, and their top single project each, not even taking into account the second and the third, which we also asked for, but just totaling the number 1 project for a little less than half of the cities, came out to be $142 million in water projects. So we know that the demand, we know that the need is great out there. We know that the demand for these grants will be great, and that there'll certainly be some tough decisions that are being made in terms of where those grant dollars go. And so again, we do appreciate you helping us. We know the state is finding the same thing, that even with the extra money, the list of needs is yet longer. So we appreciate the help and appreciate the work of the committee on this and everything else you do. Frankly, I wouldn't want to have to sit on this committee. You guys do a lot of work and we appreciate it. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would certainly take any questions, or if you wanted to hear from Mayor Sieglin first, that'd be all right too.
Anything for Mr. Foster? No? All right. Stay right there because the mayor may throw a lifeline to you. Mayor, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee. Thanks again for having me here. I agree with the statements that our CEO of WHAM just made. I understand where he's coming from. And once again, I'll kind of talk on behalf of the 42 towns that are under 500. And I think this House Bill 6 would be great for some smaller communities. And I do realize there will be a lot of competition in order for everybody to get their projects done. And not everybody will get it done because there's just not enough money to go around. But I certainly appreciate what the legislature and all the committees involved have to try to get us more money. So I'll just use Lingle as our little example. As you know, with the recent census, small rural towns lost population, and Lingo's no exception. We lost about 12% of our population in this recent census. We're over 60 people. Where everybody said, well, that doesn't mean much. Well, we only had 468 at the last one, and now we're down to 403. So when it comes in, if I may have a little bit of latitude here, Mr. Chairman, on yesterday when we talked about direct distribution, our distribution, if we go into population figures and the formulas, we will get less. So a bill like this be definitely an advantage if we get approved and proceed with our project. And as we all know, when it comes to small towns versus our cities, the construction costs, people like to say, are the same. They're no different. Well, I think in small towns, they are a little different because the contractors that do the work have to bring their equipment with them because there's just no availability around. So actually, sometimes our costs are a little bit higher than it is in one of our first class cities. And, with this bill, one of the things that was discussed yesterday that Mr. Chairman, that you brought up is that we were going to have this funding through ARPA and stuff. Well, the key word is there, we might have the funding because it hasn't been passed yet. And we hope it does get passed along with the other bills that pertain to additional funding in the state. And so that's kind of where we sit as a small town. We're kind of on the edge. Will it pass? I certainly hope so. And, because it would do nothing but help us if we get approved for those grants. And one of our project here would be a finish up a water sewer project, just to give you an idea what we estimate the cost to be approximately $500,000 to $750,000, because we're in the predicament that we have to go under a state highway, under railroad tracks, and under a gas line. So in order, you can see where the costs are going to be very expensive, and without a program like this to help us out, that project would be cost prohibitive for a small town like us. And so with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I would entertain any questions from yourself or the committee, and I will certainly again appreciate all the hard work that you have done for the towns and the municipalities and the counties in Wyoming.
Thank you. Committee members? Anything? Mayor, I've got a question. Under the existing program, I would assume that Lingle is required for little to no match. And the larger, wealthier communities may be expected to have as much as 50% of a match, meaning that the dollars in the program go further for the little towns like Lingle. This program would require you to have a 15% match. And it's only 15% for the wealthy communities that could certainly afford to pay more and make the money go further. Do you want this program, or do you want this new program, or do you want the existing program, which seems to be fairer for the smaller community?
Mr. Chairman, appreciate the question. That's hard to decide because I don't want to pit the small municipalities against our first class cities, but I see your point. For us, the way the program reads right now, every town would have to do the 85-15. And for an example, if let's say our cost is going to be to $500,000, 15% of that would be $75,000 for us to come up with. And once again, that would go back to where we get our direct distribution, and part of that money would be used for that. But I guess on the economic side, if I was a good economist, sure, I'd go back to the old program where we wouldn't have to match so much. But when it comes to down getting some money to do a project such as ours, we will take whatever we can get, and we will do what we have to do, if feasible, to accomplish that end.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I wasn't asking you to pit the larger against the smaller. I was a member of WHAM for 10 years, and we were always careful to look out for the least of our brethren. And the larger community, at least in my view, the larger, richer communities needed to give it up a little bit to help out the smaller, less wealthy communities. And I never regarded that as pitting as much as it was just looking out for each other. I didn't mean to put you in that spot. But thank you, Mayor. Any committee members, anything for the mayor? No? All right. Anybody else? Any other public testimony, Karen? Okay. Closing public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I bet you. You're welcome.
Just assuming you recognize me when my little light went on.
No, please,
So I
please,
just kinda
Senator.
took
Yes,
that as what it is.
I was looking at you
and-
I was looking at you in eager anticipation.
My colleague volunteered me. I sit on the Select Water Committee, and we worked on this bill, and I don't think I would characterize it as us trying to cut out the 5 electeds at all in this process. I would, as I recall, what we tried to do was to take a look at the fact that with all these ARPA dollars coming out and the load that we're all throwing at the SLIB board for various projects, and given the fact that this is kind of in the wheelhouse of the Water Development Commission as far as what they do with water projects every day, that we thought this is a good vehicle for this. And then I think that was what the thought process was. And then to use the expertise of for the other agencies, SLIB and the Department of Environmental Quality, to make sure that they're staying in everybody's staying in their lanes as far as providing all the documentation I think it's necessary. So that's why I'm on in favor of this legislation. We've got a backstop. We have it, as you know, we passed this, the ARPA Act, and put $50 million towards these dollars, but that was the genesis of this, and so I'm in favor.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Senator Steinmetz?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the reason I'm struggling with it is because in looking at the broad picture of everything, we just approved with our local governments, we raised that by another $15 million that'll go directly out to them through some kind of a formula, which I think we're going to tweak a little bit on the Senate side. We sent the ARPA bill over, which I realized that this is a backstop and would just give us some extra funding for water and sewer. We are spending a lot of money and we're getting a lot out to our local communities already. And one of the things that I'm struggling with is that, this has to be allocated by 2024, expended by 2026. And it just seems like we're spending quite rigorously and getting it all out the door right now. So I think that I will vote to move this to the floor. I might have an amendment to give some elective oversight because I'm not as concerned as election years. I think everyone's working to do the right thing. I will move it out because I do trust the good judgment of our Select Water Committee, which I missed the meeting that we had this going forward, but I'm going to continue to take a closer look at it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll be a no, but we'll hold the vote open for Senators Hicks and Perkins. So I'm a no. I want to get this money out. I don't want to take the time to set up a new process. There's a familiar process. I don't like the mandatory 15% match when it comes to small communities. I think there's communities that could well afford more, and our existing criteria allows that to happen. And I do believe the top 5 elected should be involved. So I'll be a no on the bill. I'd sooner put 95 million into the ARPA bill, which I think has greater flexibility and has taking processes that are already well established so that these grant apps can come in rulemaking. I'm not put 95 million into the ARPA bill, but I'd rather it go there. If we're going to spend 95 million, I'd rather put it there than here. So I'll be a no. Karen, call the roll, but we're going to leave it open for Senators.
Yes, sir. On House Bill 6, Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Hicks left open. Senator Steinmetz. Senator Perkins left open. Vice Chairman Kinski.
No.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, unless those other two surprises, it's probably moving out to the floor. Thank you. Thank you all. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 78, which is a Joint Appropriations Committee bill. And whose brainchild was this on Joint Appropes? Was it Clark? Clark's not here. And then I also thought Larson, Representative Larson, was real into this. So we don't have any of the, we don't have either of those folks or staff. Is there staff here to walk us through this? No? Yeah, no, well, you are staff after all, yeah. Well, it'd really be nice to have what do you want to do? I'd like to have Representative Larson or Representative Stith here. Or Representative Walters. Did you come here to talk to us about House Bill 78, bid rejection or denial for public construction? All right. Okay, I think it's Representative Stith's baby. We can just lay it back. Maybe we ought to just do that. Pardon? $78.
I apologize, but I'm here.
Well, we could have floundered around, but this is your baby, and I really wanted to give you a chance to walk us through it. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. And I know it's a joint committee bill.
It is.
But it's your baby.
Yeah, and the issue here, Mr. Chairman, and what we wanted to do for contractors, there's two components of this. The opportunity to bid, if you want to bid on a public project and you are, and you submit a request to bid and you're rejected, they're saying, no, you can't bid on it. We're saying you have to tell the bidder why.
Why were you rejected? Why was the opportunity for you to bid rejected? And it could be a variety of reasons that are all worthwhile, and it may, for whatever reason, to do that. The other component of this bill is when you submit a bid, you've gone through all the process, you're allowed to bid, and you submit a bid, and your bid is rejected, then they're required to come back within a period of time and tell you why your bid was rejected. And as particularly those of you here who could understand that would be, maybe they forgot an addendum in the bid. Maybe they didn't put the right numbers in the bid. For whatever reason that bid was rejected, they would have to tell them. And there's one of the important reasons for that is to help the contractor understand so that he doesn't make the same mistake next time. And if for some reason the agency is not comfortable past performance, something to that degree, then they have to share that. You know, last time, Lloyd, when you submitted a bid, you were the change order king of the world, and it cost us a lot of extra money. And so we're not comfortable with this bid. They have to identify that and help them to understand.
Okay.
There was some concern, particularly from the municipalities and counties, that if in this bidding process, if I get a bid from the three of you and Senator Steinmetz's low bid, then I have to send the other two who were not the successful bidder an understanding of why. And that's not, your bid wasn't rejected. You just weren't the accepted bid. A rejected bid is a bid because of a deficiency or a problem, and not just, and so if you've got a road project and you had 50 bidders and one was the one, you don't have to send out a notice of why the others rejected. They just weren't the low bidder. It's a deficiency in the bid that would require the municipality or the public entity to respond back to you as to why the bid is rejected.
Thank you. Thank you.
And in essence, that really is in a nutshell.
That's
Yeah, right?
it's a good explanation. Thank you. Senator Guru.
Representative Larson, so, okay, I think I got this right now. So I used to, my previous life, I was a road commissioner, and I remember rejecting a bid for a snowplow contract because the applicant, one of the applicants, just didn't have the equipment to do the job. Of course, he came over to my house that night and said, well, if you give me the contract, I'll get the equipment. And I said, well, it doesn't work that way. So basically this is what the type of thing we're talking about. That we said it at the time, but what you're saying is if it's deficient on something like that, or they didn't have the bid bond correctly submitted, or they, those types of things, that you do it. And so my question is, are we giving are we gonna trap our elected officials a little bit on this as far as, I understand you want to be upfront as you can with people, but at times. You can.
Honesty.
I remember my old planning commission days where I used to say, I can't make the findings. Now, the more you go beyond that sentence, the more you lay yourself open to, in the city or the municipal, wherever you're representing, open to a lawsuit to say that you did it incorrectly. So how am I, and I understand in an attempt to be totally transparent, are we doing something that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if you'll allow me a little bit, because there's a couple of components to this exercise that is really important. One is that the bidding entity, the contractor really has a right to know why they were in, and I just can't argue that point. The flip side of that is the public utility or the public entity also has a right if for a valid reason, they don't think the guy, so the guy doesn't have, he's got a snowplow, he just doesn't have anything to put the snowplow on, that you have the ability to deny that bid or reject that bid and share with him why. Now, the result of that is he could come back and he says, well, your public works, your county road superintendent rejected my bid, Mr. Commissioner, and I think he just doesn't, he hates my guts and liver, and I think he's treated me wrong here. That's fair. Let him come back and you can make a decision on that. That's why we kind of kept that out. And if they think it's so bad that they want to go to some sort of civil action, then so be it, but we're not doing the administrative stuff.
So then follow up. Follow up, and it was pointed out to me by my more learned colleague that there is a section here that talks about that very thing about giving, that it's not necessarily giving redress to someone just assuming out of hand. So I guess the other part of this, and I see my friend Ms. Ligursky here, that probably what we're attempting to do then is help cities and towns and other entities, political subdivisions, just write tighter bid specs and RFPs and things like that to make it more clear for folks when they're going out to put together these bids to a certain extent.
Mr. Chairman.
Please, Representative.
And so Senator Greer, you're right. And as we finished this bill up and I took it down to our Department of Construction, we have a new administrator there. I had him looked at it and he says, and he says, no, we agree. Because if we can help them learn why they're deficient, it improves them for next time. But yet it allows us, the caretakers, the stewards, if you will, of the state, to still reject when we think there's just cause. But there's nothing wrong if we think there's just cause of having to defend that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Steinmetz. Representative Larson, help me. I like the bill. I like the idea. I think we do owe an explanation, but maybe you can help me out understanding bidding law. And if not you, maybe somebody else. I went through this thing at the city where staff was adamant, lowest bid, we got to give it to him. And I said, that guy, every project he's been in, we've been in litigation. So then they insisted that we had to set out in our bid document in advance that we reserve the right to reject a bid if somebody has a history of litigation, a history of excessive change orders, or anything else. And if we didn't list it there, that we couldn't necessarily pick a different reason for rejecting it after the fact. Is that your understanding of Wyoming bid law, or if even if my bid document doesn't say, if you're the king of change orders, if you come in the lowest bid, we can just say, we're tired of your change orders, Lloyd. We didn't take your bid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I may call a friend a little bit, might have Katie come back up here, but I recall in the conversations when we done those few, when we changed the capital construction stuff here a couple of years ago, that one of the components in there is we left the public entity the ability to, they do not have to accept low bid if there's rationale in their mind to do that. Maybe that they just think it's too low. No other reason other than there's no way you can do it for that. Everybody else is here and you're clear off here. And so I don't think that it was specifically tied other than they have to give an explanation as to why they would reject that.
Okay, thank you.
But it does not have to be.
I remember a bid came in on a store design once and it was unbelievably low. They forgot the electrical. We could have accepted it, but we told them, we're going to help you here and reject your bid.
And Mr. Chairman, you've hit the nail on the head of a great example of where a bid may be rejected, and you can identify that it was deficient in the content of the bid. When the bidding documents clearly require that it has to contain boom, 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 and didn't.
So anything else for Representative Larson or Representative Larson? Anything else before I open it up for agency comment? can't believe there would be. You were so thorough.
Yeah.
Anything else, Representative? Representative Larson?
No, there is not.
All
Thank
right,
you.
I'll open it up for agency comment. Thank you, Lloyd.
Yeah,
Greatly
thanks.
appreciate it. No, you're fine. You're fine. It was you were worth the wait as always. It's just like the curtain being slow to go up on a great show. Agency comment? All right, if not, I'll open it up to the public. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Katie Legursky with the Contractors Association, and I appreciate my good friend from Fremont County to cover the bill for you. The other thing I just want to add is I really do appreciate you guys discussing this bill over the interim. One thing I would like to add about this bill that is very important, it also specifies that the public entity must also give us a reason for not pre-qualifying a contractor to submit a bid. Over the interim, we had a lot of conversations on qualified contractors not being allowed to submit a job for an entity within the state of Wyoming who is qualified to bid on that project. And when we ask why we're not qualified, we oftentimes do not get a reason why. Prime example is on a local courthouse here. We had a contractor that built the courthouse, but was not qualified to do the remodel of the courthouse. So this bill would help us to understand why that individual wasn't pre-qualified. So we do feel that this bill is necessary. It does assist us in letting us know why a contractor bid was rejected or why they were not pre-qualified for the bill. So it is very important for the contracting industry to have a better understanding of why a bid was rejected or why they were not pre-qualified. And I will stand for any questions.
Senator Guru, Senator Steinmetz. Okay, Katie, where is the pre-qual? Is that on page 5, lines 14, 15, denies a bidder or respondent the opportunities to submit a bid? Is that the pre-qual portion of it?
It is,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anything else for Katie? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of any other public testimony? Mr. Fraser, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, David Fraser, Executive Director of Wyoming Association of Municipalities. I wish I had an opening line that came even close to Representative Larson's introduction this afternoon. I just want to let you know that we're here to support this bill. We Representative the committee, Representative Larson, Representative Stith in particular worked hard on this and included us in that conversation. Ms. Legursky did an awful lot of the heavy lifting, so we appreciate her. And again, we find in the form that the bill is before you today, we find it to be fair and we're supportive of its passage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything for Mr. Fraser? All right, thank you. Anybody else here? Public comment? Okay, anybody online? Karen?
No, sir, no one's indicated they wish to testify.
All right, no further public comment. We'll close public hearing. Committee, what's your pleasure? It's been moved and seconded by Senator Guru. Amendments or discussion? Question? Please call the roll, Karen.
Yes, sir. Before I do, are we leaving this one open as well?
Well, let's see how the vote comes out.
All right. Sounds good to me. Senator Guru. Aye. Senator Steinmetz. Vice Chairman Kinski.
Aye. So we'll take this out to the floor. No
Thank
reason
you.
to hold this one open.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, there being no further